So this is me, for those of you who don't know me. I'm a tech founder, chief product officer, and currently a board member and advisor to a number of very cool, exciting companies and a few different programs and VCs that I work with to support as well. Essentially, what I do today is work with individual people, the product managers, the founders, the CEOs, the leaders of product companies. And I work with them somewhere within these 5 steps along a product process, and I view the product process as being, the part of it that I'm the most focused on. Number 1, understanding the customer. Number 2, validating their problems. Number 3, validating your solution to their problems. Number 4, building out a product strategy that can catalyze the whole team around all of the answers you discovered in parts 1, 2, and 3. And then number 5, delivering that MVP, the V1, the V2, and doing so in a way that you continually listen to your customers as you go. So this is like a sort of half a slide summary of everything I've learned in 15 years about product management process. I fully believe that I have way more to learn about how to do this than I know already today. So I'm always up for new ideas, for challenges, for discussion. We're going to be pretty focused today around steps 1 and 2, about how we understand the customer and how we start to, in a methodical way, validate some of their problems. So, give you a little bit of my story before we kick off. So back in 2005, I was a master's student at UCL, one of the universities here in London, studying geomatic engineering. And I had the opportunity to get involved early stage in a project called Openstreetmap. And Openstreetmap is to maps what MySQL AD was to open source databases, or Linux is to open source operating systems. So we were building a free map of the world. And it went pretty well. We had like hundreds of thousands of people contributing to this free map. And then in 2008, I somehow managed to raise, through a couple of rounds, about $15 million VC to create CloudMade, with the business model of taking the open source map data and creating a commercial layer on top of it, which will be very familiar to people from a bunch of companies with that type of business model today. 2010, I moved to San Francisco to grow sales and grow product. And when I got there in 2010, I was just blown away by what product management was in the Bay Area. Back in 2007, 2008, when I closed the VC rounds, the investors came to me and they were like, "Nick, you're going to be head of product." I was like, "Cool, that sounds awesome." And I went home and I Googled, what does a product manager do? And that's a story that's been related to me by so many people in product management, that how they started out was searching for what does a product manager do. So when I got to the Bay Area, my friends were people who'd been in, just people who'd meet in like cafes and bars and so on. They were people who'd been through things like Marissa Mayer's APM program at Google, the very famous product manager training program. They'd been product managers at these companies that had created the idea of what product management is. And they were going into places like Facebook that would take it on to the next level. So I got this intense injection of product process. Now, in 2011 was a super important year for the startup world. It's when the lean startup was written, and when a lot of these ideas about testing and learning and customer development were crystallized into one book. And that changed the course of a lot of what a lot of us do. So I managed to get this early ringside seat into what was going on there. It's really lucky that I did, because around about that same time, the whole basis of my entire business model and the investor story I'd made and everything completely fell apart at CloudMade. And it turned out that whilst we'd signed up 20,000 or so developers to use our maps, not a single one of them was willing to pay any reasonable amount of money. So we were really awesome at signing up people and rising our costs like this, and we had no revenue at all to show for it. So, the investors did their job and told us that wasn't good enough. And then I had to learn what a pivot was. I had suddenly a product with no real value proposition, no real business model, and I had to pivot really quickly. So over the next few years, we struggled on, we cut our team down to the bare minimum, and we survived. We pivoted into automotive, and we built a personalization platform for car makers, and we sold it to people like Renault and Ford and VW and car makers like that. And it was around about 2016 when the company CloudMade that I'd started was sold to a French company. And I spent the next 4 years scaling up. And when you sell your company and finally you have all this investment to build things and do everything you've wanted to do, it's an amazing moment. And then when you make a real mess of it by realizing you have a terrible culture, you haven't nurtured your team well, you haven't focused on creating a supportive environment for people, you haven't focused on giving a methodical set of tools for people to be able to build products with, that's a pretty bad moment.
But so, isn't that there's a tension there between move fast and break things and build culture. Culture is, slow cook.
Culture is what allows you to build fast and move fast and break things. And we were in a situation where we created this kind of top-down, pretty fear-heavy culture, which had been driven by the founders, which worked really well up to about 25 people. And when we tried to go from 25 to 125, the fear just shut people down and stopped people from being able to make their own decisions. And, what I learned in the first phase about pivoting the product and finding new markets and value propositions and customers, that was part one. Part two of everything I had to learn post exit in 2016 was culture, really how to be a good leader, how to motivate teams, and how to put in place the right structures. So that brings me to where I am today. My mission today is to help product creators achieve the impossible. I'm doing that with a number of different companies, and what I'm doing today is part of that, trying to share a few of the things I've learned and a lot of the mistakes that I've made along the way. So I'd say one of my biggest learnings is that I used to think that founders built product. And this is some of the product that I've built, which is pretty cool. New car infotainment systems, pretty cutting edge. It's me selling the product to people. What I learned is that that's wrong. Founders don't build product. Founders build the culture that builds the product. And I truly, deeply believe that this is true when you are in a two-person company, when you're just two co-founders. You're not just trying to build the product. You're trying to build the culture that the product rides on top of. And if I could go back and change things in the past, I would focus so much more from the very beginning on building the culture and giving my team the tools, the enablement, the belief, and the space to do great things. It's something I figured out a little bit too late, but I'm very pleased that I figured it out nonetheless. So that's just a little bit about me, but I want to make the rest of today about giving you guys some skills and some things you can take home. So the outcomes for today are, I would like to help you see how to align your product teams behind a common understanding of value proposition, how to truly understand your customer, and how to make sure you're building the right features. But before, I need your help. I am a true product person, and feedback is very important to me. So please get out your phones, snap this QR code, and just promise me that you have my feedback form loaded up on your phone and set an intention as soon as we finish this to give me some feedback. Good, bad, it's all super important to me. I read every single bit of feedback that comes in, and I tailor everything that goes on in these talks based on your feedback. So thank you for getting your phones out and doing that. So the way I'm going to do this is run through 3 different problems that I hit over the course of scaling up CloudMade. And I'm going to give you some cues on what some of the solutions that I found were. After 2 of these sections, there's going to be a chance for a bit of an exercise. You just take a few minutes to do some brainstorming on your own. And after that, we may have time for questions. Who knows? So this is my very cool team of super smart, dedicated engineers who at this moment are looking bored and confused. There's people checking their phone, looking glum. Alexei's hands in his pockets here. I mean, this is just body language says it all, right? Who is responsible for such glumness in a team? It's the leadership. So one of the reasons the team are looking so miserable here is because they were confused. We'd done a terrible job in leadership of setting a clear idea of who our customer was, what our value proposition could be, and giving our teams the tools they needed to go out and figure out those things. The symptom of confusion, as you can see, is people looking miserable, bored, and confused on their face. But if your team are maybe not quite as transparent, you don't manage to catch them at the right moment, back when we used to be able to get into rooms close together. Some of the other symptoms are lots of misunderstandings, just constant misunderstanding and weird meetings and on both sides, whereas, managers would say, what was that about? And the team was saying, wow, we really thought that we were presenting something that made sense here, and these were the right metrics, and now they say they're not. Lots of clarification meetings. You have a meeting to clarify a confusion from a last meeting. We did all of that. Lots of missed expectations, frayed nerves, frustration, turning into either, depending which end of the spectrum you're on, aggression or depression, tears, anxiety, or both. So one of the ways that we figured out how to fix this confusion that abated between product teams and sales teams was quite simple. It's so simple, it's almost embarrassing that I have to do a presentation about it, is by defining the terms we were talking about. So one of the things that sort of struck us was, and actually there's been an article in Forbes written about some of the terminology confusion that we suffered from, is that when I said value proposition, I knew what value proposition was in my head, but the team didn't know what it was, and other managers didn't know what it was, and sales had one version of it, and the customers had one version of it. So what I started to do was just go through one by one all of the terms in our lexicon, all of the terms I could find, and we just started coming up with definitions for them. And I tried to find best practice definitions when they existed. And if there wasn't an existing definition that we thought was good or didn't exist, we made up our own. And we wrote this down, and we were really rigorous about making sure when we said business model, what we meant was the rationale, the set of reasons, logic, and thinking for how an organization creates and captures and delivers value. And when we said value proposition, we meant something different. We meant how an organization creates value for its customers. The value proposition isn't the product, but it's the combination of the customer's problems that you solve and the value that's created. And they exist only in relation to a specific customer segment. So if you have two different customer segments, you need to have two different value propositions. What is value? Value is the relative worth of one thing versus another. So we just started to follow this rabbit hole down and started to define all of these different terms. And you know what? I realized that I wasn't clear on the terms. I thought that I knew it all, being this kind of, hotshot founder, but I was inconsistent and I was unclear. And funnily enough, I was a massive source of the problems. So we wrote it down, and writing is quite a useful invention because it's sorted things out. Customer segments, the group of people, users, or organizations for whom we create value. They don't need to be fee paying. So look at this as a nice, simple definition. I don't know if any of you spend a lot of time, we'd spend loads of time debating, is this person a customer or a channel or a partner? We make a simple definition. Your customers are anyone for whom you create value. So yes, I am a customer of Google, even though I don't pay them. So the next thing we did is use a tool called the value proposition canvas. So just give me a quick show of hands if you have used a value proposition canvas before. Okay, I can't see all of the cameras that are there, but okay, no. So we got a few hands up, awesome. So I don't know if you've had this experience with Excel, but I used to think I knew quite a lot about Excel, and then I met someone who actually knew a lot about Excel. And it feels like, the value proposition canvas is a lot like that we thought we knew how to use it and we were using it. Then we spent about 40 hours, did about 40-hour training course in how to use the value proposition canvas and realized the power of it. So the value prop canvas is basically a way of combining a number of different elements of the circle, which is the customer profile. It describes who your customer is, and the square, which describes what your product is. And if you've heard the phrase problem solution fit, you have problem solution fit when you can match the circle, an understanding of your customer, with the square, what your product does to solve their problems. So this is the very essence of a value proposition. Remember the definition of a value proposition. It's how you capture and create value for your customer by solving needs, and solving their problems and delivering value. So we're going to do some work on this in a second. But first, we're going to play value proposition bingo, and I want you to try and guess whose this value proposition is.
Uber.
Uber. Yeah.
Uber, yeah. Anything surprising here?
That they actually are calling it taxis and not ride sharing in the standard wishy-washy way.
I guess explicitly calling out cash. It's not something you really see in their marketing, but it is a big problem that we all used to have with taxis before Uber.
Yeah. It's easy to forget, right? The days of fumbling for cash, not having it, and having to walk home in the rain. What about this one?
Crown relocations.
Anybody?
Crown.
Say that again?
Crown relocations.
No, very similar. I'm trying to. Do we have any? Let me check. I've got a bit confused in my cleverness. Are any of the Perch Peak guys here?
Yeah, I'm here, but it's not. I was thinking it's not exactly our value prop, but it's close.
What's wrong? What's missing from it?
I suppose the lack of mentioning of local expertise.
Cool. Which customer problems does that solve?
Basically, if you're moving from one location to another and you haven't been there before, then you'd need to know everything about the local place that you're going to, and that's what our online coaches do.
Cool. Let's come back to that one. I made all this stuff up, by the way. You haven't got some weird website page you forgot about. What about this one? Who is this?
That's Firespace.
Yeah. Glad Will came back. Yeah. Any comment on this? How close to bingo do you think this is?
Well, it could be Hopin.
Oh, yeah. So there's something.
It's I mean, it's pretty spot on. It's interesting to see it through someone else's eyes. But it's probably about right.
So a super interesting exercise to try, right, is just to get all of your team to write down what they think your value proposition is. Because when I was in this sea of confusion with all these meetings and upset people, at the root cause, when we all tried to define what our value proposition was, we were miles and miles apart. So this is actually a pretty good exercise to do every few months, particularly when you're growing and scaling, just to check in, to make sure, does everybody know exactly what it is that we do? Or another way of looking at it, what intelligence can we gather from the people doing the work and seeing the customers about what it is we really do? So what I found was, for myself, when I standardized the approach to value proposition terminology and a framework with the value prop canvas, we had fewer meetings and got our work done faster. Our teams were happier, and management were less involved in telling people what to do, and teams were far more empowered. So, I had wanted teams to be empowered, but it's a little bit like putting 22 people on a green space and telling them to invent a really cool game. It's much easier if you put 22 people on a football pitch with white lines and a rule book and tell them to play football. You're going to get a better result. And this was transformational for me, the ability to standardize on all these different things, to put in place the frameworks, then let people go, and made an impact on people's happiness, the customers' happiness, and the product. So I'm going to show you a little bit about the value prop canvas, and then we're going to do a quick exercise. The next problem that we got to was that we had pretty weak understanding of our customers, it turned out. There was lots of interest, but we were not really able to close. This is me trying to drum up interest and close. Lots of opinion, but very little evidence. This is something that plagues product teams, right? Where this is one that then, and it will lead to very long, tedious, time-wasting meetings where you sort of talk about, I think it should do this. I think this value proposition is resonating. Sales think this. You know, the salespeople have come back and they say the customers think this. The customer support people say the customers want this feature. All of those discussions are discussions that have very weak evidence. What people say they want, what customers say they want, what salespeople think, what founders' opinions are about the future, all of that is opinion. And it contributes to a very weak understanding of the customer. So I started to think of the customers like an iceberg, where you have what's above the water being the opinion and the things they tell you, and you know what salespeople can get from them and customer support get, a little bit of founder vision on the top. Then all of the interesting stuff's under the water. It's what's going on in their heads. What are they worried about? What are they secretly trying to achieve that they're not telling people? What are the problems that they're just embarrassed to share? What are the problems that they don't realize they have yet? And over time, we managed to develop tools and processes and train ourselves to be able to go really deep under the iceberg and figure out that information. And that's when you can build this, that's when you can build really transformational products. So I'm going to show you some of the ways that we did that, some of the ways we got under the iceberg. So let's come back to the value proposition canvas for a sec. I said there are two parts to this. And one of the reasons I love this is because it is a map that shows you problem solution fit. You know, people talk a lot about product market fit. The first stage of product market fit is problem solution fit, just making sure that you have a solution to a real problem, let alone that there's a market out there, just that there's a problem in the first place. And the value prop canvas is the best tool I've found to be able to do this. So we're going to focus first on the circle. The circle is a representation of your customer. And the first thing we have over here is the customer's jobs to be done. Jobs to be done, it's a Clayton Christensen, as in the author of The Innovator's Dilemma framework. It is the things customers are trying to get done. So it's not specifically the things they're trying to get done with your product. So my job as an Uber customer is to get from A to B. It's not to use the Uber app. That's actually an impediment to me going from A to B. So don't think of jobs as the jobs people have to do only in your product. It's the jobs they're trying to achieve in their lives. It's the new location they're trying to move to. It's the events that they're trying to book. It's the experience they're trying to have. And you can break these down, I normally do, into three major categories. Functional jobs, like get from A to B. Social jobs, go meet with someone. Emotional jobs, have a good time, feel better, be entertained. The next is pains. So pains are the things that annoy your customers. They prevent them getting their job done. They reduce the output of the jobs they're trying to do. There are three major types. Undesired outcomes. You know, if you get into a taxi and it crashes, that sucks quite a lot. Or if you get, you know, mess all over your shoes from the last occupant, that is also not so good. Obstacles, things stopping you getting your job done, such as not having cash is an obstacle to being able to go from A to B. And risks, you know, the risk of injuring yourself in the taxi, the risk of being late for a meeting. One big note on pains. One of the things that I've suffered from, and I think a lot of the product creators I talk to have suffered from, is it can be very difficult in customer discovery and customer interviews to figure out what is a minor annoyance that people are shouting a lot about versus a real need that people will pay for. And this is at the heart of where the Henry Ford quote that isn't actually his quote about, you know, if I'd have asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. This is at the heart of that whole confusion about customer discovery, because if we simply listen to the customer support channels, items that annoy customers, that is, you know, doesn't necessarily relate to a job the customers are trying to get done. So it's good to think if you have these coming up in your product, things that people are complaining about, but it's not going to stop them using the product. Give an example of this. Yesterday, I have like 15 Slack accounts, Slack workspaces or something, with loads of different email addresses. And I was just trying to log into them all and get them all on the same email address. It took me 45 minutes. I was like, how can this be so hard? This is such a pain point. I'm so irritated and angry with Slack, and they, billion and billions of dollars they're worth. It's because they're smart enough to realize it's a minor irritation. There's no important job that is stopping me from doing. So this was pretty important when I figured this one out.
Question on this.
Yeah.
Are these also in isolation for the customer just by themselves, or is this already introducing the idea of them using our product? Like in the same way that the jobs to be done are in isolation away from the product, do you think that this also applies here?
So if your product creates pains, you definitely need to consider them. And if your product creates new jobs, you need to consider them. But you should start from the point of view of looking without your product, what is the job the customer is trying to get done, and what's the pains that associate with that job?
Can I ask a question actually there, Nick?
Yeah.
So pains, when you get to some pains, they're not explicit, they're tacit. They're just the way things are done. So people never question that. How do you deal with that?
Sorry, what was the question? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, how do you deal with it? Sort of tacit pain rather than explicit pains. Clayton Christensen thing is famous because the job to be done with a milkshake.
Yeah, renting milkshake
was deep, pretty deep, but no customer was ever going to tell you that its job was actually to fill me up enough, but not so much, and not to spill.
Okay, yeah, got it. So the way you figure that stuff out is by customer discovery. It's going out and talking to customers by asking them questions about what job they're trying to get done, observing and asking them what are the problems they have and how they measure success. And I think in that example, that's how they figured it out, right? For anyone who doesn't know, there's in Jobs to be Done, Clayton Christensen, they talk about people renting products to solve immediate problems. So some fast food chain in the US figured out that people getting a drink, a milkshake, they're not doing it to satisfy hunger or thirst. They're doing it to satisfy boredom because it's boring driving. And when they figured that out, it led to them making it bigger, and there's all kinds of stuff like that. But yeah, that's customer interviews, customer discovery. And when we are able to do these things again in a few weeks, a month's time, ethnographic research, like going out and observing customers. And I think that's how that milkshake one was figured out. I think it was like someone riding along in the car. We did a lot of that in the early days at CloudMate, of just sitting and observing how people use their cars. And it is a super valuable way of gathering primary information. Okay.
Sorry, Nick, just want to add one thing. I saw the extended version of this stuff, and right now they say, the guy from Deloitte probably created this schema. He said that and try to create that canvas. It actually don't try to avoid actually creating like new jobs and new pains, because when you create a new product, you also can create a new job if that your product actually changing significantly their daily routine or job routine is also the problem. And this should be the place here as well.
Yeah, totally. I think you can get into some nuances of that, but I think the overall guidance is a very good one to look at. Are you creating, what kind of burden are you creating for people with the product? So, okay, I want to make sure you guys get a time to work on this. Gains are the outcomes and benefits that the customer gets. There are four major types, required, must happen, expected, desired, and unexpected. So just tearing up in terms of the unexpectedness to requiredness. The way to get at gains is to ask people questions such as, how do you measure success? What outcome are you expecting? What does good look like? Just like pains, gains attached to a job. So, money doesn't fall from the sky and sort of bathe you in itself, right? You have to do a job to get value, to get whatever the gain is you're trying to get. So this is stage one of understanding the customer. Simply, and with the startups that I work with, we focus on the circle in isolation, and we specifically try and turn off any idea of product, and we try and become ethnographers, researchers, and we go out and we talk to the customer just to understand the jobs, the pains, and the gains that they have. So I'm going to give you a few minutes. Let's take like 5 minutes on this. This is just a super quick sprint, right? Just to get used to doing this. I'm going to put on a timer for 5 minutes and invite you to do a 5-minute speed brainstorm here on choosing the customer segment that you know best from your business. If you can't think, if you're confused about what a customer segment is, don't worry. Just take your prototypical customer. Who pops into your head first when you say my customer? And then just brainstorm to yourself on a bit of paper, their jobs, what are they trying to get done, their pains, what's stopping them getting those things done, and the gains. How do they measure success? Move fast. If you get stuck, just carry on. This is just an exercise. You'll have time to come back to this later on or next week. Okay, I'm going to start the timer. I'll check in with you guys in 5. Feel free to ping any questions in chat, by the way, whilst this is going on. 10 seconds to go. Squeeze in some last jobs, pains, and gains. And time is up. Awesome. How was that? Anybody want to share any thoughts, observations, feelings?
Sorry.
Go ahead, William.
Thanks. So yeah, in doing it, I found that a lot of the stuff I was writing about was way more broad than like our sort of technology and solution addresses, and it kind of nails some of it, but it's like a very narrow part of the broader jobs to be done. So I found myself writing lots about stuff that we don't currently touch.
Interesting. Unmet, unserved jobs, potentially. Cool.
And pains and gains.
Yeah, awesome. Anyone else want to share anything? Good,
So,
bad?
I had one thing, which is like basically in B2B, there's always that kind of thing that's looming at the top in all your gains, which is like people are mostly doing that so that they don't starve, like doing their jobs. Like they need to be able to do their job to afford rent and food. And like how to, if that's the highest level need that they ultimately have, like how does that compare with maybe B2C gains that they could potentially have, where it's actually people maybe just being able to get from one place and enjoy doing that kind of thing. It's like it's that I feel that a lot of these tools are very B2C based.
Okay, I totally feel that, and we were heavily B2B at CloudMade. Not SaaS masquerade as B2B. We were like insanely high customer, millions and millions of dollars customer acquisition cost, and like $20 to $100 million NPV of a deal. So like completely B2B. And to make this work in B2B, you need to create a different value prop for each segment. We discovered at CloudMade, we'd come up with an end consumer value proposition for how to make cars better. And that was all important, but what we actually needed to focus on was the chief engineer, who was the decision maker, and what he, and in every case I've ever seen, it's he, what he wants is to not get fired, to look good to his boss, to not miss production schedules, to reduce weight, to reduce carbon, none of which we did anything about. So when we were able to break that down, we were able to say, well, okay, we can't start magically saving weight in cars with software right away, but we can at least make ourselves non-offensive and non-threatening to him. And that really helped. So my tip for anyone in B2B is to unbundle the customer types. But happy, shoot me an email, because it's kind of a hobby horse of mine as well.
All right, thank you.
So Sam, you said an example where fear prevented good decision making. Yeah. So sadly, a lot of painful ones. One was around CES, Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, where somehow, I can't remember how it came out, but it basically came out that our team were just terrified of it and no one wanted to work on the projects for CES because this idea came that like if CES wasn't amazing, that it would be a disaster and like would be the end, the end of the company. If there was a bad demo done there, everything would just finish. And that was a big one for me because again, I had to do a bit of soul searching and figure out why is that? I mean, no one's ever said that. We've certainly never told anybody that, and that's not the way it is. Maybe that kind of view resonates with some of the founders here, right? The feeling of we're only one mistake away from disaster. And I found out that I was projecting my own anxiety about, God, if the wrong customer says no, it's going to be the end. I was completely projecting that to my team who were having to pick the whole thing up. And it just crippled. No one could make good decisions because I just projected my fear and anxiety onto them. That's one particularly painful example. You take one, yeah.
Thank you.
Pardon?
I said thank you.
Cool.
I was going to ask you just about the B2B one, because I've actually gone through this exercise. And the problem is the value proposition of Kansas breed like rabbits.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get, it's almost too much detail.
Pull it all back to a summary, like the summary statements they showed at the beginning. For each customer segment, I can send you a slide afterwards, which I have as part of the product strategy. We're allowed 5 major segments. We want a maximum 140 character value prop description for each one. That would be my tip. Shoot me an email because I love talking about that type of stuff. I just want to make sure we get to the square as well. So
yeah, I can confirm the same problem that for B2B, in most cases, you have several customer segments and you need to have this canvas for each segment.
But I tell you what, if the B2B people want to chat, like shoot me an email, we can set up something. I'm really interested in it and I've done it a lot. So I can really help.
I'd certainly be interested in joining that as well if we want to do a set session or something.
Shoot something over because I want to show you the square. So what I found was when we truly understood our customers, when we had the circle nailed for each different customer type, we had faster close times. It was far easier for the product teams to do their job of choosing which features to build. And we had far more productive internal meetings. So really worth doing. So final problem I want to talk a bit about is building the wrong thing. So you can still understand your customer and build the wrong stuff. So some of the symptoms here are, features hardly being used, failing to get product market fit, solving petty annoyances. This is one of my big mistakes made early on. My only saving grace here, please note this was 2009, so the lean startup, we didn't know any of this stuff, right? We didn't know. So basically we came out with this brilliant idea of trying to monetize. Remember I was saying our costs were like this. We had lots of traffic, really high cost. So we're like, cool, well, we'll sell our traffic something. We'll sell them some stuff. What do geo developers want? Well, they want data. Cool, that makes sense. Let's make a data marketplace and we'll build the entire thing. We'll do all of the licensing deals with these really big companies like Axiom that take years to license from. We'll get it all ready and we'll do a really good job of it. And then we'll do loads of PR. And then we'll build a website that literally nobody ever even clicked on the try button. So like just absolutely kind of this completely classic lack of a lean approach. So this is something, my only excuse is it was a long time ago. But still today, of the startups I'm working with and people I talk to, this problem still pervades this idea of like building things, making partnerships, signing deals, doing all this hard work, when often all we need to do is just put a button on a website and drive some traffic somehow to it to be able to validate. And it kind of feels like we should all know this by now, but we still fall into the trap of building things and doing the work and falling in love with our own solutions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to avoid that. And the value map is the key to doing this. So what is the value map? The value map is the square in the value prop canvas. This describes exactly how your product and service, this little thing here, how that alleviates customer pain, as in stops the pain, or creates a gain. So what we're looking to do here is draw a line directly between pain and gain. And we're going to show if there's a pain, such as, oh, I can't get a taxi when I've got cash, we're going to create something that solves that, like cashless payments. If a gain is getting, in the B2B example, if the gain is getting a promotion, we need to do something in our product that gets our stakeholder to get a promotion. We need to help them become the hero. And that's how we're going to be really, really successful. So this is quite a new way of thinking about product, right? Because we often start over here with writing out a list of features to solve some vague problems that we think we know about. But what we can do with the value prop canvas is look at the whole person, look at all of the jobs they're trying to get done and all of their needs, and we can solve for the wholeness of who they are. So I'm going to invite you now to take a really quick sprint, 5 minutes on this one, right? To brainstorm through these things. So just the pain relievers and gain creators. Don't worry about your product yet. It's actually the least important thing here. So sticking with the same segment, move on to the square. Brainstorm, what are the pain relievers and gain creators? Move fast. So I'm going to put 5 minutes on the clock for this. Actually, I'm going to put 4 minutes on the clock. Pain relievers, things that solve customers' problems that you've already written down. Gain creators, things that amplify their gains. So kick off, and I will tell you when you're halfway through.
Sorry, Nick, could you just go over the definition of pain reliever and gain creator quickly?
Yeah. Let me move it back, because I did that very quickly. So the pain reliever and gain creator, they describe how your product and service is going to alleviate a customer pain or create a gain. So for example, cashless payments in an Uber removes the pain of not being able to get a taxi because you don't have cash.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Time is up. So I hope that was good for everybody. I'm going to move on through because we've got about 6 minutes to go to the hour. I'll stick around a bit after the end of the session. So if anybody wants to, we can chat and sort of compare notes and things. So we just brainstormed the square, the value map. Let's look at how this fits into the value props. So the snippet thing I showed at the beginning, our ride-hailing service, aka taxi, helps anyone, customer segment, who wants to jobs travel from A to B by making gain creator taxis available instantly, whilst pain reliever eliminating the need for cash. So this is how you can get complete clarity from your teams. This is how your teams will feel liberated and able to act autonomously because they've got to this clarity. And this is how you can avoid having a million different value props on the wall with Post-its falling off and not knowing where it's supposed to be, by getting a very, very, very concise, formulaic way of showing things. I've tried over the years, like, I don't know how many ways of formalizing the value prop, a value prop statement. This is the best one that I've found. You can download all the, I'll send you a link with these slides afterwards, so you will have that there. We found, when we did this, we found that we got better reviews and scores for our products once we understood the customer and once we started to tie the features in the product to the real jobs, pains, and gains of the customer. We found that when we could tie every single button and every pixel to very specific jobs, pains, and gains, that we had better reviews and scores. We got our product market fit scores up faster than we had done in the past. And we had happier teams. You know, like I said at the beginning, to me, it's all about culture. And this is a key part of product culture. It's having these tools and frameworks in place that enable you to allow your teams to be empowered, to be to operate on their own and make their own decisions. So this is like just an example of the sort of eye chart of what the final thing can look like. This is for this workshop, by the way. I more or less think in terms of value prop canvases these days. I want to just call out a couple of things here. So this is the completed set of jobs. What you do with jobs over on the right here, the yellow Post-its. With jobs, what you do is you stack rank them in terms of most severe, most important to the least important jobs to the customer. And you find that out first by intuition and then by going out and asking the customer. And then once you've asked them, you can do things like card sort exercises. Then these blue lines that I've highlighted, these lines that I've highlighted here, right? What I'm showing is how you tie back gain creator to gain to job. And this is how you start to do that sanity check to make sure the gains that you're boosting are gains that relate to important jobs for the customer. And you can also then start to identify unserved jobs like Will was talking about. So you have this, grab Miro experiment. So wrapping up, today we looked at a small number of the problems that exist in product, confusion over terminology, getting a better understanding of the customer, and avoiding building the wrong features. The kind of problems I encounter every day are, emotions distracting teams from decision making, sales teams being frustrated, product managers who are too busy to talk to customers, disengaged product teams, founders feeling their vision isn't understood, the mixing up of CTO and CPO responsibilities, teams feeling they aren't listened to. Funnily enough, founders feeling their vision isn't understood and teams feeling they aren't listened to always go together. Takes two to tango, I guess. Sales dictating product features, burnout and anxiety in product teams, which is a massive risk right now. So these are the kind of spaces that I occupy and the problems that I enjoy dealing with. So coming up in a few weeks' time, I'm doing a deep dive on all of these topics. So on the 24th of March from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. GMT, we're going to do a 4-hour deep dive on this. And we're going to talk about how to take out all of this, the value prop canvas and test it. So it's not just a theoretical, thing done in the lab. So we're going to go into how to use jobs to be done in quite a bit more depth and with way more time for brainstorming and feedback, good and discussion. How to define customer segments that are a true fit to reality. What to do when you are B2B and you have lots of customer segments. How to specify product features that solve real customers' problems. And then how to use customer discovery techniques such as interviewing, talking to customers, landing page tests, direct email campaigns, card sorting. So this whole library of different exercises you can do before you commit to building product to test things. So this QR code here is a link to the workshop page. It is 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. GMT on the 24th of March. £399 for the general public and $299 for all of you fantastic people for coming today with that MYVP discount code. And it's a small group. There are only 10 people in each workshop. I will run multiple workshops. We keep it small so that we can have time for conversation, make it a bit more intimate. So that is coming up. I would really love to see some of you guys there. I will hang around and keep this room open for the next 5 or 10 minutes or so if anybody wants to hang and chat. You hopefully have my email address, nick@nickblack.us. Please feel free to reach out to me about questions. I'd love hearing from you. And don't forget, feedback. If you only do one thing today, scan this QR code, go to my type form, leave the feedback. So thanks, everybody. Like I said, I'll hang here for like 5 or 10 minutes if there are any questions. If not, have a really good weekend and maybe see some of you on the 24th of March.
Thanks, Nick. Nick, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, jump in.
It's just Tommy here. The value proposition canvas, I think it's such a powerful tool, and we actually use it quite a bit. But we use it, I suppose, we use it between myself and the 3 other co-founders just because one co-founder is technical, one is salesy, one is design, and I'm the product sort of person. We don't want to, I suppose, do like a top-down approach to say, okay, the co-founders go and do this together and then go back to the team and say, this is what we decided. So how would you work that? Because we want to empower like the entire team to come up with ideas and solutions, because I think that's the best way of working. How would you do that exercise? Would you do that with the entire team at once or in subsets and little like project groups, or how would you manage that if it was you?
It depends on your culture and your team and how connected they are to your customers and so on. But I mean, I have done this with everybody at the same time. They need to be trained. So you need and you use these slides, right? But train people on the concept. What is the expectations? What are the definitions? Show some examples and then let people go for it. You're probably better doing it in groups of 3 to 5 max per value prop canvas and just split your teams up. Have people allocated to different customer segments. Miro is a great tool for doing it remote. And I would just train people, give them the expectations, and then let people do it bottom up.
Perfect. Yeah, just the remote thing is something I think we're struggling with a little bit, because beforehand we'd be very good at doing it on a whiteboard, just getting people together. But we just sort of found that doing these sort of exercises remotely, they can be very meeting-y, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we don't want it to be, we want it to be like an engaging process. So it's something we probably struggled a little bit, but we'll check out. I'll definitely check out Miro. I haven't used it before.
Oh, Miro is fantastic for this kind of thing. And I find everything's got to be kept short when it's virtual, and you're going to get max 5 hours of decent work from somebody over Miro in a day.
Nice. Super. Thanks a million. That's great.
Cool. Thanks for coming. Just shout with the questions. It's a alternative to democracy, I suppose.
Hey Nick, so what's the difference between customer gains and gains creator?
So the gain is in the customer's own words and mind. How do they think about success? So if I'm going from A to B in a city, how do I think about success? The time it takes me to get there.
Oh, okay.
Reliability, arriving at my destination. The gain creators are how you amplify those gains to make them bigger, more frequent, to boost the gains.
Right. Okay. Got it. Thanks.
Make sense?
Hi Nick, I've got a bit of a question as well. We've gone through sort of interview process with some of our customers as well to sort of arrive on pain points, and what we get is often sort of 50 specific pain points, and obviously you then go and group them and categorize them. But for the purpose of these sort of exercises, we're wondering how granular to go, because I mean, for example, we could pretty much boil everything down to I want to save time, I want to save money. But probably we don't want, on the other side of the coin, we don't want all 50 pain points either. So I don't know if you had any sort of advice on how to.
Yeah. So firstly, make sure that it's jobs, pains, and gains. So to make sure that the pain point really is a pain or a gain referring to a job, so that you avoid that stuff that people are just complaining about. It's just annoying to them, but they're not going to churn out of your product. They're not going to stop paying. They're not going to rate you low. It's just something they're complaining about. Then there's a load of things you can do. One good one is, so testing is the way to go next, to start to test your thesis. So state a thesis and say, look, we think that what is really going to delight our customers is this combination of solving these particular pain points. And test that first by talking to customers, then doing some kind of response test, like a landing page or a card sort or an email response. And then if you have the capability and the users, put it into the app as an A/B or a multivariate test. But you need thousands and thousands of users for that part to work.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, that's really useful. Thank you. So to summarize, you probably would categorize pain points around a job that needs to be done.
So what I try to get to is the cluster upwards. So to get, an understanding, what are the most important jobs? What are the most severe pains and the most significant gains for the customer? Then I kind of take a step back, look at all of that, and I try and derive either what you can call a theme or a strategy from it. And you take this bigger picture, zoom out, and you say, wow, so, arriving on time, really slick in-app user experience, and so on. COVID safety, maybe a theme or a strategy, you could call it. And then you come back in and you look at what are the feature points that align to that theme or strategy. And you set your North Star metric to align to that cluster. That stuff I kind of cover in step 3 of the 5-step process I was looking at. if you're not there yet, not ready to go up to a strategy level, then yeah, just start to use your intuition and then test your intuition with experiments.
All makes sense. Thank you very much. Cheers.